I love Mass Effect. The original trilogy developed by BioWare blew my mind when I first played it. The cutscenes were cinematic and awe-inspiring, the story was gripping and epic in scale, the music perfectly set the tone, and the characters were some of the best in gaming. Mass Effect became the tentpole BioWare franchise during this time, becoming a cultural monolith within the RPG genre and some of my favorite games of all time. Suffice it to say, in 2017, BioWare had some big shoes to fill for the fourth installment in the now legendary franchise. Yet, despite my massive love for this franchise, this is my first time playing the successor to those original 3 titles. When the game initially launched in 2017, Mass Effect Andromeda was in rough shape. We've all seen the videos, right? Poor facial animations making character expressions look like bad claymation, game-breaking glitches that would crop up around every discussion of the title. The result was a swarm of memes, mocking videos, and negative reviews from fans, despite critics being a bit gentler in their reviews. GameSpot gave it a 6 out of 10, IGN gave it a 7.7 out of 10, and PC Gamer gave it all the way to an 80 out of 100, basically an 8 out of 10. These scores, they have me wondering, was all of the hate warranted? Is Mass Effect Andromeda really that bad? Or did the memes and funny videos overblow the issues? I didn't play Andromeda at first, partly because of the mocking it received at launch, but perhaps now things have changed. In this video, I'll be taking a look at Mass Effect Andromeda with fresh eyes in 2025 to see if it really is as bad as online reaction claimed, or if there is some promise and merit to this space exploring adventure through a new galaxy. If this sounds interesting to you, make sure you go ahead and like the video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'd really appreciate it. Andromeda starts off on the wrong foot. When you first launch the game, you'll be prompted with several options to customize your main character, Ryder. Pretty standard stuff here on the surface. Gender options, appearance, training, which basically is your starting class, name, and whether you want your father to take on the default look that BioWare created for him, or take on the traits of your custom character, which honestly is pretty cool and kind of interesting that is something that happened during this time. Like Fallout 4 did the same thing where your son Sean would look like your 2 custom characters. So that's pretty interesting. And you can also do a history, which is just you choosing Shepard's gender, which, why is that even there? You can also upload your custom Ryder's appearance or input other custom Ryders that others have made online to use yourself, which I think is pretty good because sometimes you just can't quite get the face you want and somebody else can, so I definitely approve of that idea. Here's the problem. The options for customizing Ryder are abysmal. There are 10 presets you can choose from as a template. However, they lock you into certain facial features. If you like the nose from, say, Head 1, but the mouth of Head 5, well, too bad. You gotta pick one. You can't individually change nose, mouth, ear, eye, or eyebrow type. You're forced to make the adjustments to one of the 10 presets. This was really disappointing, especially given that Mass Effect, the first one, 10 years earlier, felt like it had more options and freedoms than this, which is 2017. We've seen games of this era have more options than this and more variability in terms of how you want to make your character, and I guess they just decided that was too hard. After failing to make a decent custom Ryder, I decided to just load up the default, something I almost never do in these games. So, right off the bat, I was feeling frustrated and pretty annoyed at what felt like a regression from previous games. The opening cutscenes and tutorials play as we're introduced to the central concept of the game. We are the Pathfinder, the leader of a group of humans who joined what is called the Andromeda Initiative, sent out into the Andromeda Galaxy in order to find life and a livable world beyond the Milky Way. The game chronologically begins between Mass Effect 2 and 3, just prior to the Reaper invasion, and it's meant to be a Citadel Council contingency plan to keep the Citadel races alive if Commander Shepard failed to defeat the Reapers. That's when the Arks, these massive ships carrying all of the Initiative members to Andromeda, that's when they took off. But it took 600 years to travel to Andromeda itself, so the game is actually more like a sequel to the original trilogy, taking place 600 years after the Reaper invasion. The whole point of this was to separate Andromeda from the legacy and weight of Commander Shepard in the original trilogy. For Andromeda to succeed, it needs to stand on its own and be judged by its own merits, rather than trying to attach itself to the legacy of those original 3 games. I have no problems with this direction whatsoever. Andromeda represented a new beginning, a new era for Mass Effect, so starting us off with a brand new character in a brand new galaxy, it's a fun and exciting way to continue the franchise without tarnishing the series' legacy. When we awake upon entering the Andromeda galaxy, we're met with our first mystery of the game, the Scourge. The Scourge is some kind of energy field that damages things that interact with it and malfunctions most technology that comes near it. The Scourge serves as this background greater mystery that persists throughout the game. It's something to be feared and be intrigued by, something to motivate your exploration as you try to find answers as to what it is and how to navigate it. After getting past the Scourge, we land on the first of what were termed golden worlds, or worlds that had a high probability of being inhabitable by the Citadel races. We land and explore the vast new planet unsure of what we will find, or what will find us. This opening sequence is pretty solid. The opening to a Mass Effect game is really important to me. Mass Effect 1 opened with a nice, clean setup to the world and universe, and showed us who Commander Shepard was. Mass Effect 2 has an exciting opening scene as the Normandy explodes and Shepard is reconstructed by Cerberus. Mass Effect 3 has one of my favorite openings to a game ever, as we experience the Reaper invasion of Earth firsthand before escaping to continue the fight. Mass Effect Andromeda does a solid job setting up the concept of the story, introducing an immediate intriguing mystery to be solved, and dropping you into a world to explore. And boy, is that world something gorgeous. Andromeda uses the Frostbite engine developed by DICE, famous for the Battlefield series, instead of Unreal, which the original trilogy used. While this caused a headache when Andromeda was being developed, the result was a game with gorgeous landscapes. Dropping onto this first world and gazing out at the vista before me, I was awestruck. This wouldn't be the only time this happened either. Andromeda features several moments where you can gaze upon a massive construction or look at a gorgeously arranged skybox and just lose yourself in its beauty. I really think the environments and set design in Andromeda is top-notch stuff that still holds up even in 2025. The animations and characters though, that's a different story. Andromeda having poor and even comical animation quality at launch, that's well known. However, I'm playing this game almost 8 years after its launch, so how bad do they still look? Well, not as bad as the memes and videos from 2017, that's for sure. Compared to how characters moved and emoted in 2017, Andromeda has come a long way. However, there's still a lot of hiccups. Characters almost feel stiff. They constantly look like they're walking around with sticks up their asses. Despite a lot of cleanup being done, the faces do still stand out as the worst. They aren't as goofy or comical as they once were. Instead, they're robotic and stilted. The only parts that move are the mouth and jaw majority of the time, leaving the rest of the character's face expressionless. Their eyes are soulless and like to dart around in weird ways. Parts of the face, like the eyebrows, will sometimes move separately from the rest of the face. They don't look like expressive, emotional characters. They look and move like animatronics. It makes me uneasy. Instead of expressions making me laugh, they oftentimes make me wince. I never encountered any game-breaking bugs or glitches, but I did encounter plenty of absurd ones. For example, when trying to talk to a group of scientists who all have a quest for me, they all just started sliding around like cartoon characters on ice. When I actually spoke to one of them, the camera would freak out as the character model slid out of frame. There were moments where the background music while exploring would be extremely loud no matter how low the in-game settings were, then abruptly it would stop when entering conversation, only to start up again when the conversation ended.
No news on the Turian Ark yet? Or is this militia business?
I had a few more moments of minor bugs, such as audio cutting out, images not appearing when they should, and menus not operating properly, but all in all, none of them were egregious or common enough to irreparably damage my perception of the game. During the tutorial segment on the first planet, we get a feel for the controls and movement. Ryder feels responsive and fluid, and I really like how he has this little jet booster that can either thrust him forward or give him extra height on jumps. This extra mobility adds a new dynamic to combat and a verticality to exploring areas that previous games in the series just did not have. If you aim your weapon while jumping, you can also hover in the air for a time, which is always pretty fun and allows you to get a better vantage over the battlefield when needed. Though, It will also make you more vulnerable to enemy attacks, so there's a cost benefit to it. A little ways into exploring this first world, we are introduced to the Ket, the first alien race to be discovered. Their design is really neat. They have this bug-like quality to them that freaks me out. Come to find out, we come in peace doesn't really sit well with the Ket, as we see them murder our fellow crewmates in cold blood, causing us to retaliate. The Ket are now marked as our first enemies in Andromeda. I mean, we had to have something to shoot, right? During this first shootout, we also get to experience combat for the first time. Combat is definitely a highlight of Andromeda. The jet propulsion Ryder can use adds a level of dynamism to encounters. Mass Effect was typically a slower, cover and shoot kind of game. When you got into a firefight, you almost always slammed Shepard up against a wall, peeked out to fire at enemies from a distance, then hunkered back down for protection. Repeat this a few times while slowly inching your way forward, and boom, encounter done. In Andromeda, things are a lot more chaotic. The AI does a good job fanning out and flanking your position, forcing you to move around rather than stay hunkered in one spot. Jet boosting gives you a lot of versatility, as you can choose to boost quickly from cover to cover, boost towards enemies for some close quarters action, or to jump above the fray and rain down hellfire on enemies hunkered behind their own defenses. Because of this, I had a really fun time playing a melee shotgun focused build, making use of powerful biotic attacks to close the gap between myself and the opponent, using the shotgun to eliminate smaller enemies or drain the elite enemy health bars, and then striking with a melee attack to finish them off. The melee doesn't feel nearly as impactful as in Mass Effect 3. I mean, Shepard was going ham on those guys when he would use his Omni tool for that, but it gets the job done. Unfortunately, the actual enemies themselves, the Ket, are nowhere near as interesting as an alien race as they are in a firefight. The Ket are really frustrating. They're the first alien race we discover in this great new galaxy, and all they serve in these initial moments is for something to kill. It's later explained who they are and what they want. Essentially, the Ket move from world to world, harvesting life forms and turning them into themselves. Thus, every Ket we kill was actually once a person from a different race of beings. They follow a draconian religious dogma and believe that transforming other species into Ket, and thus taking their genetics and improving their race as a whole, is a benefit to the being morphed. They call it exaltation and see it as a blessing that they graciously bestow upon their victims. This religious element and apparent consciousness of the Ket is really the only thing separating them from the traditional science fiction zombies. I've kind of seen this movie before. The Flood and Halo do a similar thing. Hell, even Mass Effect already did this with the Reaper-created husks in the original trilogy, or, to pull from another BioWare game, the Darkspawn from Dragon Age. It's pretty disappointing to have the first new and exciting alien species we encounter amount to nothing more than an evil alien for us to shoot, whose main point of intrigue is something we've already seen countless versions of earlier. The next alien encounter we discover doesn't fare much better either. See, we're introduced to another set of beings, the Remnant. These aren't a species per se, they kind of come from a different species, but instead the Remnant are constructs created by some long-lost ancient civilization of hyper-advanced aliens who left behind technology with the power to terraform worlds and... Sound familiar? The Remnant and the technology surrounding them may as well be carbon copies of the Protheans and Prothean technology from the original trilogy. Now, to give the writers some grace, perhaps there were some grand plans for the Remnant and some brilliant discovery that we would uncover about them as the next games in the series released, which now will never see the light of day. As it stands, the concept of the Remnant is the exact same as the Prothean technology from the original trilogy, minus the cool twist we learn about the Reapers being the true origin of it all. That's two major discoveries in Andromeda that are just slight variations of something we've already seen before, making a large part of Andromeda's lore feel uninspired and stale. The only really neat thing to come from the Remnant are the Architects, giant, hulking, flying metallic space forms that you can fight from time to time, and who thrust themselves into orbit when defeated. These things are awesome, and fighting them is a blast. Everything else, not so much. Thankfully, there is one more alien race that saves Andromeda from fumbling the entire bag. Early on, as we explore the new galaxy, we enter a place called Aya. You wouldn't know it from the way the planet looks, with its volcanic, cracked, soot-colored atmosphere and flaming smoke tornadoes out in the distance. Seriously, what's up with this? Why is this just a normal thing that no one points out? But There is, in fact, a full-fledged civilization living on it in a lush, green, bountiful part of the planet, hidden from the Ket by the Scourge and the planet's position close to a black hole. Here, we meet the last of the new alien species in Andromeda, the Angara. The Angara are awesome. They describe themselves as highly emotional people with strong family ties, sharing mothers and fathers as their family network grows ever wider. Jal, the companion we recruit from the Angara, is a standout character in Andromeda as one of the more interesting companions. What's disappointing about this is that the Angara are all we have. Evidently, according to information that came out in 2021, there were as many as 10 new species that we could have met across our journey through the Helios system. But due to budget, time constraints, overall issues with development, and apparently to keep new species cosplay friendly, they were all scrapped in favor of the Ket, Remnant, and Angara. It's a crying shame that out of the 3 new species in Andromeda, only one is really worth the inclusion. Everything about Andromeda is supposed to be exciting. New planets to explore, new aliens to discover, new mysteries to solve, but in reality, most of what's here feels either like a stale recreation of past stories, or bland padding to inflate the runtime. Andromeda attempted to improve upon what BioWare created in 2014's Dragon Age Inquisition, which featured huge areas with tons of fetch quests and areas to explore that felt largely mundane, tedious, and boring. The goal of Andromeda's side content and massive explorable worlds was to be memorable, yet everything about them is as forgettable as can be. The Frostbite engine did wonders for the aesthetic of planets in Andromeda. They're gorgeous to look at and fill me with a sense of awe and wonder when thinking about the possibilities out there in the wild expanse of these golden worlds. The problem is, this awe is not rewarded. Your reward for exploring the great unknown is the most mundane side quests and activities you could possibly find. For any of the interesting moments, of which there are some, the steps taken to get to the compelling bits make the journey ultimately not worth it. Take, for example, one of the side quests on the ice planet Vold. In this side quest, we clear out a nest of Ket and free Angaran prisoners within a large dig site. One of the prisoners informs us that the Ket were attempting to dig something of interest up. After clearing the rubble blocking our path, we enter into a giant frozen chamber housing an ancient Angaran AI. The Angara we're with had no idea that their species was capable of making an AI so advanced so long ago. This discovery could become a valuable resource in the battle against the Ket, and for learning about Angaran history. Before that could be achieved, the AI goes rogue and threatens the life of one of the Angaran if you do not eliminate the AI itself. We're now faced with a choice: preserve this AI technology at the cost of an Angaran life, or destroy the AI and save our Angaran friend. This dilemma, the idea of an ancient AI uncovering the mysteries of the Angaran past, is the setup for an awesome quest and story. The problem is, the entire AI chamber sequence lasts maybe 2 minutes at most. Meanwhile, getting to the chamber itself, running down endless hallways, blowing up rooms and rooms of Ket over and over, takes so long that you forget what your goal was in the first place. It's mind-numbing how many side quests in this game, which have really high potential given the subject matter, falls apart due to the repetitive nature of delving into Ket bases and fighting the same Ket variants non-stop. The original trilogy had plenty of side quests similar in pacing, running through various rooms, killing enemies, and progressing forward. Most often in those original games, though, in between fighting, you'd be exploring the rooms, discovering codex entries and audio logs that tell a detailed story about that location and that fill in the gaps that help you inform your ultimate encounter or decision at the end of any given questline. Here, while there are some codex entries here or there, they are too few and far between and do not compel me to engage with them in any way. I wish I could say the side activities are any better, but they're worse. Driving around in the Nomad is mind-numbing. Nothing interesting ever happens when you hop into the Nomad. Just endless driving toward different destinations. A spider in the road here, a dinosaur randomly in the middle of an ice lake there, a spot with 3 remnants in it and absolutely nothing of value there. Just nothing interesting at all. The best thing about the Nomad is that it does not really care about any terrain or long fall it takes. Theoretically, if you fall long enough, the game will fade out and reset you where you last were before that fall. However, I discovered that if you have the Nomad's wheels at least momentarily touch something that it thinks is the ground, then you can go from the highest mountain and jump down to the lowest depths with no fall damage or repercussions, meaning getting around was made 10 times easier. But that also kind of invalidates all of the geographical and topological challenges that should come with traversing open world spaces. It's such a shame the Nomad is so boring to drive because there is an insane amount of companion dialogue that happens while you're in it. Every 5 minutes, my two companions, no matter who you pair up, were having some kind of conversation. I wish these happened during regular missions, but instead they all get crammed into this boring, stale Nomad time. When you finally wake up from your boredom and make it to your destination, what you'll find are side activities that amount to the most forgettable objectives ever. Go scan this, go kill this, pick this item up, countless fetch quests. You can establish outposts for the Andromeda Initiative to settle people and begin colonizing new worlds, but even here you're not really doing much. Just mundane fetch quests for people who you forget as soon as you turn away. I admire the effort they put into these outposts. There's a lot of people to talk to, not just for quests, but also just to chat, learn who these people are, why they came to Andromeda, and what their goals are. It's a shame because clearly they want players to feel a connection with outposts and to feel like they're a living, breathing place. But none of the character stories have any spice to them, so they all blend together and get lost in the ocean of other mediocre, bland characters. Mass Effect Andromeda is supposed to be about exploration and finding enjoyment in the adventure. It's not the destination, it's the journey kind of philosophy. Yet every decision, from the Nomad to the monotonous side quests and forgettable activities around planets, resulted in the most mediocre open world experience I've played in a long time. Instead of enjoying the ride, I was begging for it to end. All of these flaws within Andromeda, they're forgivable. BioWare has never been the most exciting developer in terms of gameplay. They're never terrible, but that's unlikely to be what you remember most. The key to a great BioWare game and the aspect which can smooth over the rough edges of their games is the excellent characters. The backbone of any great BioWare game is the characters you come to love during the entire adventure. BioWare has a magical ability to create some of the most memorable, charismatic, interesting, and endearing companions in gaming history. Garrus, Rex, and Tali from the original Mass Effect trilogy, Alistair, Morgan, and Varric from Dragon Age, HK-47, Bastilla, and Mission Val from Knights of the Old Republic, and so many more. BioWare's companions have wedged themselves into the hearts and minds of fans for decades. They're what hold up BioWare games and smooth over glaring flaws because they're so damn compelling that you stop caring how engaging the combat is or how interesting any singular side quest is because you're simply happy to be running around with these characters by your side. They push and pull the player in different directions. They make us care about the world because these characters we come to love exist within it and tell us about their life, struggles, and experiences within it. I've always believed, no matter what else, mediocre story, poor art direction, lame combat, none of it matters as long as the companions in a BioWare game are great. This is Mass Effect Andromeda's gravest sin. On paper, these companions should be all-time greats. Drac is a grizzled, old-school veteran Krogan who has a soft spot for his grandchild. Vetra is an analytical mercenary with a history in smuggling and back-alley deals who will go to any length to protect and provide for her sister. Cora is a human that trained and operated as an Asari commando and was next in line to become the Pathfinder before our father chose us at the last moment instead. Jal is an Angaran who is as foreign to us as we are to him and who's struggling to find himself and become accepted within his own community as well as this new community that has appeared in his galaxy. There are great templates here for amazing characters, and yet they find a way to fall flat. See, when I think of Garrus or Rex, Tali or Thane, Legion or Liara, they each have what I'd call an aura, a presence. Every memorable companion, hell, every memorable character from BioWare's past games has had a strong aura. As soon as you see them, hear them speak, you identify the major character design elements, and you understand the core aspects about them. Take Garrus, for instance. You first meet him heading up toward the Citadel Council, where you hope to expose Saren as a traitor. Garrus is there speaking with his boss, the head of Citadel Security, Palin. He demands that Palin stall the council, the very seat of Citadel government, so he can continue his own investigation into Saren's misdeeds. Immediately, we see an adamant, stubborn, and rebellious character who is willing to skirt the rigid rules to achieve what he believes is a just end. Later, we meet him again when entering into a hostage situation. He decides to take a shot at the criminal, deciding coldly that it was worth the risk to the hostage. When you look at him, he's sharp, has that singular visor over his eye, signifying some level of tactical training. He wears all blue with blue paint covering his face, blue being the color of a cool, calm, cold, and calculating personality. What about Rex? Donned in all red from head to toe, Carapace dyed the same color, deep gashes and scars across his face symbolizing history of battle, and sharp red eyes that remind you of a beast hunting prey. The first time we meet him, he's talking with a member of Citadel security who warns him to stop making threats at a local bar run by a crime boss. His response?
I don't take orders from you.
Threatened with arrest, he laughs and taunts the security guard. There are countless examples of this aura across all of the best companions BioWare has to offer. They're filled to the brim with strong personalities that immediately make you want to speak with them and learn about them. So how does Andromeda fare? Let's take one of the more interesting characters, Vetra. Vetra describes herself as a wrangler, provisioner, gunner, and everything in between. She's someone with a history in smuggling and mercenary work as she tried to provide for herself and her orphan sister all by herself. So, what do we see this badass, rough and tumble mercenary smuggler doing when we first meet her? She's moving boxes. Yeah. Not exactly indicative of what her character is supposed to be, is it? Okay, well, what about Drac, the grizzled veteran Krogan? Well, we do see him involved in violence at least. He throws one of the Ket attack beasts through a window and then he jumps out of it, walks towards us.
Let's get to it before there's any more Ket.
Who are you?
Yeah, this guy supposedly hates Ket and loves killing them, so why was his introduction as lame as just throwing one of these beasts through a window off screen? Why didn't we catch him in the middle of a firefight against a swarm of Ket, or see him take out a few by himself? Instead, he's off camera shouting in angry pride over killing a beast that we've killed probably 100 of at this point. Now, while first impressions are important, they obviously aren't everything. Characters develop and become more interesting over time, but the lack of presence these introductions have is indicative of how the companions feel throughout the entire game. There are flashes of interest, like when Jal, our Angaran companion, asks us about gifts for the crew because he isn't sure how gifts work and what other species like. Or when Drac is telling stories about his grandkid. But by and large, their core stories leading to their loyalty missions just lack any soul to them. On paper, their stories should be interesting, and I should want to go on a grand adventure with these people. But ultimately, the way they're written, the staleness with which they tell their stories and speak on a moment-to-moment basis, just left me disinterested. Ryder himself is no different. I get what BioWare was going for with Ryder. You had just played 3 epic games about a badass, legendary commander in the Alliance military who takes on a galaxy-level threat in the Reapers and unites all of the Citadel races against this singular foe. Commander Shepard demands respect and authority anywhere they go. They're confident, self-assured, and definitive in their actions. No matter what dialogue choices you make as Shepard, they have a confidence about them that informs a lot about their personality. Ryder is the polar opposite. He's young, insecure, uncertain, and inexperienced. This wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Not every character can be Commander Shepard, but he could still be inspiring. It's inspiring to take on so much responsibility when you're not ready yet. It's inspiring to come into your own and eventually become a great leader. It's inspiring to earn the respect of your crew around you slowly through action. Yet, Ryder never inspired me. Instead, I pitied him. Throughout my 30-hour experience, I never felt like Ryder was coming into his own. He was constantly walking in the shadow of his father and never developed his own confidence. There was a scene late into the game, one of the last scenes I saw, in which all of the companions meet up for a meeting called by Ryder. At the end of the meeting, after a heated debate, everyone just leaves. This wouldn't be a big deal if it wasn't for the game calling attention to it. When everyone left, Ryder stood there, alone, awkwardly saying he did not dismiss them. And then he desperately cried dismissed.
Hey, I didn't say dismissed or meeting adjourned or anything. Meeting adjourned. As you were.
I don't need Ryder to be an experienced military commander like Shepard, but I also can't become too invested in Ryder when half the time I see him, he does something really embarrassing. Ryder also receives a great deal of his characterization through his relationship with his father and sister. This is an important factor that separates Ryder from Shepard, but which also was left so underdeveloped that it hurts Ryder's character. Commander Shepard had a background you could choose which had some effect on his outlook and your roleplay, but only marginally relative to the entire experience. There are moments when it becomes relevant, but for the most part, it's just a part of Shepard's history. In Andromeda, Ryder's past is key in developing his character. Ryder's family is brought up constantly, especially his relationship with his father. The issue is I've barely met the guy. He's in the beginning sequence, and through the tutorial segment, we have maybe 3 exchanges with him before he dies and leaves us as the new Pathfinder while jamming an AI into our brain. I don't have any idea who this man is or why I should care about him. Your options through dialogue usually equate to he was either the best dad in the world or a deadbeat. I'm not confident in either of those options. Ryder's sibling is also a problem. You're said to be really close with them, but they remained in a coma during the entire time I played. How am I supposed to care about any of these characters or how Ryder feels about them if I can never talk to them? I have a pet peeve when writers attempt to force me to care about a character simply because they throw the word father or mother, brother or sister in front of them. At the end of the day, these are characters that I need to see and interact with before I can begin to develop any sort of emotional attachment to them. Just using family to try and force me to care, it's not going to work. Another issue with Ryder goes beyond his character and to a core tenet of BioWare games: morally gray situations and the decisions that you make within them. For many interactions in Andromeda, this core philosophy of BioWare was awkwardly and shockingly left behind. Take, for example, this interaction with one of our ship's crewmates, Suvi. Suvi is a devout religious follower and believes strongly in her faith. You're given 2 options when faced with this declaration of faith: unquestionable agreement or aggressive dismissal. I did not want Ryder to be religious, so I chose the latter option, not knowing exactly how it would play out. What resulted was a full-on argument against Suvi's stance, questioning her belief and presenting problems with her viewpoint. Why? Why did Ryder need to tear down Suvi's belief system? After the exchange, you can thankfully get an option to essentially say, your beliefs are yours, I respect it, but why did it have to take an argument against Suvi for that to happen? It just felt like someone on the writing team had a vendetta that they needed to shove into this interaction, but kept it low-key so no one would take it out. This is a false dichotomy, forcing us to choose between 2 options when a better third option exists. It bothered me greatly during this entire playthrough. Another situation, for one side quest, we investigate the first murder in Andromeda, at least the first of our new settlement. Come to find out, the perpetrator technically didn't kill his target. He fired the shot, but in the dust and sand that was kicked up during a Ket firefight, he missed, and a Ket blast was the actual killing blow. With this new evidence in hand, we are given a choice: let him go with no punishment or retrial, or cover up the new evidence and exile him away forever. What? Why are those the only 2 options? Why can I only choose to exonerate him from all crime even though he did, in fact, commit the crime of attempted murder, or to punish him for a crime he didn't commit? I ended up selecting exile, but I hated it. Why was there no third option for a change in punishment, or a retrial on new charges of attempted murder? Something that makes more sense than these extreme 2 choices. I love when choices are morally gray in BioWare games, and when I'm forced to make a tough decision based on the situation. But these decisions aren't tough because of the moral ambiguity. They're tough because the developers forced them to be so by giving us a false dichotomy. This leaves Ryder with a family background I don't care about, a personality that does not work, decisions that are unsatisfying and artificially difficult, and scenes where I feel embarrassed to be playing as him. I think taking this route with Ryder could have worked out. Perhaps if there were more scenes where Ryder feels insecure before mustering up the courage to speak up and declare authority, I might have been convinced of his development. Or, just skip the awkward moments where Ryder has to sadly feign his authority when the crew clearly doesn't respect it. There's a plethora of different ways to make the story compelling, yet Andromeda fails to do it all. Mass Effect Andromeda could have been a new beginning for the franchise. The very concept of exploring a brand new galaxy, meeting entirely new characters, separating this series from the legacy of Commander Shepard, it's a smart decision that had the potential to create a solid foundation for stories to come. Instead, BioWare was unable to capture the magic that they once had in the original trilogy. Combat was refined to something dynamic and engaging. BioWare had never been a studio best known for its action combat, yet they managed to create a system in Andromeda that was really fun. They created worlds that were gorgeous to behold and promised to be filled with interesting locations and meaningful quests. But the fulfillment of the promise never came. The worlds remained empty husks, having no more personality or intrigue than a basic cat. The alien species you discover were too few, with 2 of them being retreads of tired concepts. Companions carry BioWare games on their backs, holding them up when other parts fall off. Yet, these companions were nowhere near the level that they would have needed to be to have Andromeda's faults forgiven. I can't ignore the stale quests and empty worlds when the characters I'm doing it all for don't motivate me to do so. For a player in 2017 who had never played a Mass Effect or BioWare game before, Andromeda might actually have been a worthwhile experience. It would have been easier to digest the mediocrity at play here if you've never tasted the delicacies of the past. For someone like me, someone who knows how great BioWare can be when they're operating at their best, Andromeda is a sign that those glory days may be gone. I haven't enjoyed a BioWare game since Mass Effect 3. Dragon Age Inquisition felt too much like a single-player MMO, and Andromeda failed to deliver on its opportunities. Anthem was an absolute disaster no matter the way you look at it. I went into Andromeda hoping to see something others didn't. Hoping that all of the memes and vitriol it received at launch was overblown and, with patches and a lot of time, it had become something worthwhile. Unfortunately, while the animations have become tolerable, the flaws go so much deeper than what's on the surface. I've been waiting for BioWare to return to glory, and they've yet to do so, and I fear they may never reach the heights that I'd once seen them achieve. Dragon Age The Veilguard has already been released, and I've heard mixed things about it. Perhaps that will be my last bastion for BioWare. Mass Effect 5 has been announced, but with so little going for them, I'll need to see some proof that they can handle revitalizing such an important franchise. I have yet to play Veilguard, but when I do, I hope that it can inspire me as BioWare once did. Stay tuned to this channel for when that video inevitably drops, and we can see if BioWare can win me back. For now, thanks for watching and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Make sure to comment down below your thoughts about Mass Effect Andromeda, BioWare in general, or anything else you might want to talk about, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Talk to you later.